We've been getting a ton of questions since our announcement the other day that the short barrel firearms would be removed from the taxation and registration requirements of the NFA thanks to the new language added by the Senate in the reconciliation bill. So, we thought, why not answer some of the most popular questions that we've gotten about what will happen when President Trump signs this bill into law. Hi, I'm Ben, and you're watching the Minuteman Moment. So like I mentioned before, we've been getting a ton of questions related to the reconciliation bill, and that makes sense. It's a confusing process. Here's the basics on what you need to know. Reconciliation is a process related to tax code. Simply put, lawmakers cannot change criminal code through the process. If something in the bill is determined to be policy rather than tax related, it kills the bill. Thankfully, the National Firearms Act is solidly a tax. Numerous federal courts have ruled that this is the case. And because the National Firearms Act is a tax, we can cut taxes by removing items from its purview. This is why we at GOA are sure that removing suppressors and short-barreled firearms fit squarely within the requirements for reconciliation. Now that that's out of the way, let's get to your questions on the language of the bill and what it means for gun owners. Question number 1. Are the NFA's fingerprint and registration requirements still mandated with the bill's text? No. By changing the definition of a firearm in the NFA's tax law to only machine guns and destructive devices, suppressors, AOWs, and short-barreled firearms will have their taxes removed as well as their registration requirements. Question number 2. How would suppressors, AOWs, and short-barreled firearms be treated if this tax cut was signed into law? They'd be treated as regular firearms subject to the 1968 Gun Control Act. That means you'd be able to buy a suppressor from an FFL and take it home that day after filling out a Form 4473 and a background check. Same with SBRs, SBSs, and AOWs. And you can just put a stock on that 300 blackout pistol that you've had as long as it's lawful under state law too. Question number 3. What happens if I live in a state that mandates federal registration on suppressors or SBRs? The Senate's goal is to remove the taxes on suppressors, AOWs, and short-barreled firearms. We are currently working with the Senate Finance Committee to ensure that removing the tax does not accidentally create a de facto gun ban. Question number 4. What is the current timeline on this bill? The current deadline set by the House and the Senate leadership seems to be for the bill to be on President Trump's desk for signage by July 4th, although that could be delayed by fighting over other tax-related provisions. Question number 5. Is the $200 tax the primary issue? Yes. Under the Byrd Rule, the $200 tax is the primary issue. Anything else, including registration requirements, are incidental factors of removing the tax. Question number 6. Would machine guns and destructive devices still be under the NFA's tax? Yes. Unfortunately, Congress drew a red line. That's why it's important to vote for no-compromise GOA candidates in the future, and to continue to get your friends and family members into shooting sports and Second Amendment-related activities. This helps push the Overton window towards gun rights, creating the political environments necessary for large changes like this to happen. With your support, I truly believe that one day we'll fully repeal the NFA. Question number 7. What happens to traveling across state lines with short-barreled rifles under the proposed tax change for the NFA? We are currently talking to the Senate Finance Committee to include language to protect interstate travel for SBRs. If it's ruled non-Byrd compliant, the current restrictions imposed by 18 U.S.C. 922A4 and B4 will remain in effect. Question number 8. What is an AOW? An AOW is a firearm that does not fit into the statutory definition of a short-barreled rifle or shotgun. Essentially, it's a catch-all category for concealable firearms that are not handguns or revolvers. Question number 9. Does GOA have any leverage? You tell me. GOA's federal affairs teams worked to learn the Byrd Rule and reconciliation process for months to become experts for the committees. GOA led the charge in Washington and even received pushback from other three-letter organizations for pushing for a full repeal of SBRs, SBSs, and AOWs. Our lobbyists even spent a significant amount of time teaching other organizations how the reconciliation process would work, planning the strategy with our key allies, negotiating the bill at the highest levels, and ultimately had to keep a lot of the best news secret for days, weeks, and months throughout the process. Question number 10. Why didn't we include national reciprocity? Concealed carry reciprocity would fall under the Judiciary Committee's jurisdiction, and if we include it in the Senate Finance Committee or the House Ways and Means Committee, it would violate the Senate's Byrd Rule and strike it out of the bill. Additionally, reciprocity as it is written might be viewed as primarily a policy move. Just look at how much pushback there is from anti-gunners that the NFA isn't a tax. Question number 11. Is GOA just sitting back now? No, it's quite the opposite. We're working in overdrive now to ensure that the language is polished further and keep the pressure on the members of Congress. We're also helping senators formulate the best Byrd arguments they can for the parliamentarian. So you should be doing the same and keep calling your member of Congress to keep this language in. Question number 12. Are we fighting to preempt states from banning these firearms? Unfortunately, that is primarily a policy move, and according to the Senate Byrd Rule, it would violate it. There's no state preemption in this bill. We have to keep focused primarily on the tax in a very narrow window to conform with these tax cuts. The Senate's Byrd Rule severely limits what we can and can't do. Question number 13. Is this a generational win? Absolutely. we have a chance to remove the unconstitutional $200 tax and registration requirements on suppressors, SBRs, SBSs, and AOWs that's been in effect for 91 years. If that's not a generational win, I don't know what is. Question number 14. Will this cause problems if the definition of firearm is changed? Remember, the definition of firearm is related to the NFA. So for the purposes of the NFA, under the current language, the tax and registration requirements would stay for machine guns and destructive devices. Question number 15. Is there any hope for California? Well, similar to question 12, if this language passes, it does not make these firearms legal in states that ban them. However, it would help GOA to argue in court that states cannot ban them, because the bans would not be protected by congressional taxing power anymore. You can join GOA to help us file more of these lawsuits. Also, who expected even a year ago that we might be gutting the NFA? Who knows what kinds of wins we could get in California if all of you gun owners get active and join the fight. Gun Owners of California is doing some seriously amazing work in the courts, but we need your help in Sacramento. Question number 16. Let's say we get all this in the one big beautiful bill and it passes. What's next? Good question. The yearly funding bills are coming up, so our team will be fighting to further cut the ATS budget, continue the defunding of the VA fiduciary rule, enact pro-gun rules at the ATF, and delete the ATF's illegal gun registry. We will also be pushing the House leadership to hold a vote on H.R. 38, Constitutional Concealed Carry Reciprocity. That's just a few of the things we're currently fighting for in DC. Question number 17. Have we ever been this close? Absolutely not. The NFA has been untouchable by Congress for almost 100 years. This is a huge deal. Question number 18. Why couldn't we make it no background checks at all? As part of budget reconciliation, we can only take down the NFA since Congress and the Supreme Court have determined it to primarily be a tax system. The background check you get at a store would be under the Gun Control Act of 1968 and is criminal code that can't be touched under the Senate rules. We hope you're just as excited as we are about this potential for a huge victory for the Second Amendment. So be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date with GOA's latest fights for your rights.